By the way, those are some very good potatoes. I also want to thank you for your hospitality, allowing us to come in, your generosity for supporting this each and every year. I've said that if we didn't resolve our transportation challenges, it would adversely affect our ability to grow, to develop, and I push for an increase in the gasoline tax or some other form of revenues dedicated to transportation. That I thought that unless we addressed it, that the cost would continue to go up, that the transportation fund would be significantly reduced, that it would place a huge burden on the county. That Montgomery County, for example, had floated at that time over $300 million of bonds to support state transportation projects, and that we needed to fully address it. Unfortunately, I said that 7 years ago when I was running for this office, and was severely criticized by many for advocating that. Anyone looking at the picture at that point in time could have seen the ultimate result. Stevie Wonder could have looked at that and said, unless we address it, we'll be proper. And we are today talking about how we fund the Carter City Transit. And if you look at the growth and development for this community especially, it is critical. We need it. My transportation transit task force will come out with a recommendation in a day or two. We'll advocate very strongly for another form of transportation in order for us to move along. And one of the items in there that I am particularly targeting is the Carter City Transit as a means to jumpstart. If we don't do that, based on the development plans that we see, those transportation projects will halt the ongoing development in this region. And I want to make certain that we avoid that. It's a huge issue for us. And so unfortunately, we are back at that point. Now, I decided today to bring a couple of charts because as I talked about numbers, sometimes people sort of glaze over them and we're not sure about where we've come in a short period of time. But I want to just show you this, if you can look at this for a second. This is what I've done over the last few years in terms of this great challenges we face. The first year that I came in, by the time I assumed office, we were well over $200 million in the hole. This is before I basically taken my hat off after swearing the oath of office. This is what I faced. This was before the recession. If you look at this over the few years that I've been in terms of recommended budget, in fact, I recommended cuts and reductions probably about 20 to 30 million, about 60 to 70 million dollars over the number that you see here. This was found in dollars. If you look at this number in total, you'll see that in the total 6 years, I have reduced county budgets in terms of projection by $2.6 billion. 1 year alone, $975 million. Keep in mind that we have a budget of about $4.5 billion. It's a fairly large budget. But a lot of that is structured. We'll tie it into a maintenance effort level and a number of other things that you simply cannot get through. This is what we've done over the last few years in terms of cuts and reductions. Reducing COLAs, furlough employees, changes to the pensions, changing to our health requirements. Massive reduction. You heard about the reductions in the libraries. We reduced the libraries by about 28% in a relatively short period of time. I made those very painful and difficult reductions that you now see based there. Now, another way of looking at that, in terms of where it goes, the cumulative effect of the tax-supported budgets over a 5-year period, the cumulative effect of that, tax-supported budget, that is what we pay our tax dollars for, the cumulative growth on the my watch for 5 years was actually zero. For 5 years. Now, this is the year prior to my arrival. 11%, 11%, 14%. In fact, the 4-year total was 42% in 4 years. In 5 years under my leadership, it's been zero. That's it. Now, this number, look at FY13 and why that number is important to you. FY13 is that now you see a 5.5% increase. And people will start, oh, like you've had these immediate reductions. Why are you at 5.5% at this point in time? Why would you recommend that? But keep in mind that 5% comes over growth of a budget that has been significantly reduced. That's number one. So it's not from a base here, it's from a base there. Secondly, look at the growth that has occurred in the county. Of that number, that 5.5%, let's see where that goes. Thank you. Oops. See where that goes. 37.7% goes to public safety. I've decided that we're cutting public safety, especially police, a little too thinly in terms of what we should be. And so I've developed a plan with the chief of police to increase the police force by approximately 143 officers over a 3-year period. 40 some this year, 40 plus next year as we go forward. Where are they going? For the most part, responding to the challenges of the growth that has occurred in the up-county areas. That's where it's going. Of that number, $60 billion is going to a retiree health benefit plan. That's a pretty bold leadership position to put money there. That's in a trust fund. Now, the reason I say it's a pretty difficult leadership position to put that in is that we've been under the gun for the last 7 or 8 years, long before I arrived, that said that our retiree health benefit portion of what we needed was underfunded. But no one did anything about it. Why? Because if you put monies into a health benefit trust fund, that's a problem down the road. That money goes into a trust fund. I'm not building a police station, a recreation station. I'm not building a senior citizen station. I'm putting it in a school. It goes into a fund you never see, and therefore it's easy for public officials to say, I'm not going to do that. It's irresponsible, but it's easy. It is someone else's problem down the road. I've said, no, that's wrong. We're going to address it. So part of this plan is to restore that. So up until 2015, we will fully come back into compliance because we are now putting the monies in to make that whole. Of the rest of the money, $27 million or so goes to our employees. As I indicated before, I've now provided for 3 years, COLAs, step increases, change in pensions, change in health. And so my plan this time is to give our employees a $2,000 bonus. Not a COLA, not a step increase, not a merit increase, not to the base, but simply a $2,000 cash bonus. Now the school system may take a different approach to that. I'm a little bit cautious because I'm not sure what next year will look like, so I do not want to build anything into the base. There's a lot of controversy about it. But it's $2,000 as to each employee, not in terms of a 2% COLA, not a 2% plus of that in terms of a merit increase, but that. Now, when we break that down, thank you. In terms of that number, that amount going to the public sector, I've also in that same period of time reduced county's workforce by 1,254 positions. It's about 10% of the entire workforce. Now, in this budget of that 5.5% that you see here, it brings us to 92 positions in the upcoming budget. But keep in mind the comparison from where we've been in the past, what I've reduced, versus what I'm adding. Of that 92, 58 are in public safety. There are 40-some police officers, and there are about 11 in terms of others that are there for fire and rescue. All of that, for the most part, is dedicated here because in terms of the public safety number, in terms of the fire and rescue, we're building additional stations in this area. In addition to that, there are 11 transit positions. Where are the 11 transit positions going? We're adding 3 more routes. Where are those 3 routes going? Into this area. So basically, the growth that you see in the entire county's budget, that 5.5%, the overwhelming number of that is responding to the growth in terms of public safety, fire and rescue, police, transit, and 15 positions for libraries throughout the county system. That's it. I say that because I am very cautious about what I'm adding, because I do not want to go back for the next county executive to have the problems that I faced when I was county executive. I say all of that because there's a lot of controversy about a couple of other things that I've recommended. Because I've said, for example, that I want to continue the fuel energy tax. Quite controversial. But I wanted you to see that recommendation in relationship to the cuts and reductions that I've made and why I'm looking at increases that are relatively small. These are strategic increases. Now, I've said to people for a number of years that if you simply stuck with me, remember, stick with me over the past, and I said to you in the past, right here, that if we put in those reductions that I wanted to make, by 2013, we will see positive results as a result of those decisions. And people